Captain John F. Manning Jr. I screened for command and ended up going to VF 32 back at Oceana. Spent a year as XO, working for a great guy named Bill Hayden, and then we had our change of command. I took over. Again, we were back on Independence, now this time with F-14s instead of F-4s. And that initially was a challenge because the F-14 is quite a bit heavier, and the biggest thing was just moving them around and moving them up and down on the elevators. But once again, once you're there, it's home, and Independence did fine. I mean, most of the challenges were at handling the airplane, not much else. And we, let's see, we went back to the Med again, and that. Oh, the other thing in VF-32 that I'd forgotten about, right at that period of time is when they were introducing the TARP system into the Navy, and that's the Tactical Air Reconnaissance Pod. And we had operationally tested that at VX-4 when I was there. And it was a replacement. The Vigilantes were gone and the Photo F-8s were gone. And so it was a way to get photo reconnaissance back into the air wings. And so it turned out in the distribution of the TARPS assets, the highest numbered fighter squadron in each air wing between the two squadrons, got the TARPS pods. And originally, nobody wanted that TARPS mission, you know, but it turned out actually to be interesting and much more important than most people gave it credit for, because people are always looking for the reconnaissance information, you know, especially the intel people and you know, the staffs, the embarked cargo staff. They thought that was pretty important, so they always wanted to make sure those airplanes, at least two of them, were on the flight deck. And as I recall, I think we had 3 or 4 airplanes capable of carrying the pod, and it was a couple thousand pounds, and sat back aft on the airplane, and that's when you know, the issues around Lebanon and had heated up in 1970 when I was the XO, and then we're out there, we deploy, and then the first cruise when I was at the XO in the beginning was fairly routine, and we ended up completing the cruise, no big incidents, again, mostly just training exercises. And we ended up coming home, I think, sometime, I've lost track now, but I had my change of command at sea on Independence. I relieved Bill Hayden. Our new XO was a guy named Jim Sherlock, and so we finished that cruise, and then we came back to Oceana and started this cycle all over again, and we got ready to deploy again, and I think we deployed in, you know, we got underway in October, and thinking we're going to the Med, and I think we were going over there to relieve Eisenhower, and we weren't underway a day when we were told to turn right and go south, and that was Operation Urgent Fury for when the Cubans had been setting up in Grenada. And so we headed down there, and it was we were the only carrier, and Air Force had some assets down there, and Second Fleet was in charge of the battle operation, and so I remember I flew one of the first TARPS missions over the island, because, you know, we didn't even have very good maps of the island. I mean, I think we had some tourist maps or something when we started out, and as I recall, most of the activity was down towards the airfield in the south of the island, and we ended up being offshore, and the A-7s would do some strafing and bombing. And we were available to strafe. Never really used the F-14s. Probably not a good use of the airplane, unless it's, something at sea or desperate. But I think the operation lasted about 2 weeks. It uncovered a lot of issues, in the, the Army's involved, Marines involved, Navy, Air Force. Couldn't always talk to each other, and those kinds of communications and organizational issues, which later evolved, and that's why there was more emphasis later on in joint operations and joint staff. But as soon as we finished that exercise, we headed to the Mediterranean, and we ended up going all the way over to Lebanon in the Eastern Med and spent some time over there. And so we were flying TARP sorties over Lebanon at that time. I flew several of those missions, and then and I'm getting towards the end of my tour now. This is in November, late November, early December, and sometime in around the 1st of December, we got indications that we were going to have to do a strike into Lebanon, and it was a joint strike between the Kennedy and the Independents, and that turned out to be more or less the infamous strike that it didn't really work out so well. And the Air Wings did their job, but they didn't really go at the optimum time, and they were directed when they were supposed to go, et cetera, et cetera. And that uncovered some flaws in the communications. And Admiral Jerry Tuttle, I think, was the sort of the battle commander. He was CDF 60 at the time in the Med. And long story short, we had a couple airplanes shot down. My CAG was shut down. 1A6 was shot down from I think the other air wing. or from the Kennedy, and it turned out, not to accomplish much, but we did the strike. And then the fallout of that, of course, was, all of the developments that later led to the formation of Strike U at Fallon and all of those associated things. But I think it was like 4 or 5 days after that strike, I had my change of command on Independence, and it was up on the forecastle, and the next day I flew off in a COD or an S3, I can't remember what. But I traveled back to the States because I had orders to go to a short course at the Naval War College.